Good day, mates. My name is Mordecai, and welcome back to the show, where an aspiring roleplayer narrates various RPG-related stories as a learning tool. I am speaking through my familiar Aquata once again, partially because he asked if he could have the spotlight by himself for a while, and since we're both learning what having a phoenix as a familiar really means. There's a learning curve to it, much like the learning curve that occurs at the table in terms of learning how to run the game, or engage in successful play with the party. Learning curves are an important aspect of play at the tabletop. Regardless of whether that's as a DM or as a player, there are characteristics that require time, patience, and consideration. And sometimes learning how to roleplay effectively can be a significant obstacle. And as a dungeon master, you do have to invest some degree of leniency and mediation when the party as a whole is encountering an escalating series of potential issues. Ideally, you want these issues resolved before they become problems. So what happens in today's story when a new DM handles a situation of escalating issues in a poor manner? Let's find out on another delve. Before we begin with today's story, if you like my content and want to see more, feel free to subscribe and like the video. It's free to do, and every bit of support is highly appreciated. Plus, you can always change your mind at a later date. Let's delve into the often terrifying world of r/RPG-Horror-Stories. Today's narrative is titled, Fighter with Superiority Complex Demands Advantage and Nearly Kills Wizard, and is written by Jester TF. Well, my current D&D 5th edition campaign is nearly at its end, but we have been playing for well over a year and a half, with many fun, sad, and emotional memories. But it reminded me of a player I had near the beginning of the campaign. The party was a group of mercenaries who all needed money for their own personal reasons. I will use character names to protect the privacy of everyone. The party consisted of me, acting as the GM, at the time still being quite new to DMing, and seeing that this was my first serious party. Lady Alvindra Ambrose, or Vin for short, a human wizard who wants to gather money and study a new form of magic called chronoenergy. He's a close friend of mine in real life, who was invested in a new D&D party since his last one had disbanded. He played as a strategist, yet curious player who wanted to explore the world's lore and flesh out as much of it as possible. Azra Duratar, a Azamar Ranger. She needed money to rebuild her house for her and her daughter, which was burned down by her ex-husband who went a little bonkers. Her daughter of 8 stayed with the neighbours as she went to travel. My girlfriend who had interest in D&D but had no idea where to start. But she quickly opened up and had more fun playing. At first she stayed silent in the back, but as she learned to open up more, she got more into it. Rofaran Arbor, a half-elf druid who was in search of money so he can buy his village back from orc slave workers. Another friend of mine who I met through Vin. He had an interest in D&D and was more of a calm voice of reason for the most part. Nephirith Nox, a tiefling rogue who fled from her hometown because her adoptive father saw her as something different than an adopted child. I had met her through gaming online, and she wanted to join a new D&D party as well. She was mostly a supportive character towards others and their backstories, but fell silent if it came down to her own. And lastly, Kara, the half-orc fighter and the problem player, who wanted money mostly because he liked it, but also wanted to get stronger items so he could defeat his old rival who banished him from the army. He joined through Nephirith, being her at-the-time partner, and had experience playing a combat-heavy game before. I knew him as well for being in a gaming team together, and he was known for generally being salty and kinda ragey. I warned him that this campaign would be a lot less combat-heavy, and would involve a lot more role-playing, since everyone preferred that, to which he agreed with, and was fine with it. It was, unfortunately, far from being fine. The party got together after clearing a town of a virus that had been turning people into ice, finding the medicine and returning it to them. After they had finished their task, they went to the tavern to discuss what to do next. The discussion got a little heated, but I thought it was not the worst thing since they seemed to be into the roleplay. After a bit, Azra asked a question, seeing we would travel over a part that included her backstory. Hey, could we perhaps stop at the village at the end of the bridge? Why so? Wouldn't it be smarter if we went directly to Beggar's Hole? The town where our next mission is located? Well, I used to live there, but after a fire, my daughter had to stay with the neighbors while I gathered money to rebuild it. Oh well, that makes sense. I guess we could stop on our way there. I guess. And if there are any strong guys there, perhaps we can fight them. Preferably not. They are nice people. Kara let out some rather grumpy noises, in which I should have already noticed that he just wanted to bash heads in, but for some reason I didn't notice that at the time. After travelling to the town, on their way there they found some guards with wanted posters, looking for a group of criminals. The party had not seen them, but they decided to keep an eye out since the bounty on the posters was pretty high. The party decided to rest in the town for the night, in which Rafaran noticed a goblin stealing something from a blacksmith. After warning the party and following the goblin, they find the hideout where they were storing all kinds of treasures and gold, which is also where Nefereth finds her first magical item, a cloak of Elvenkind. For those of you who do not know, the cloak of Elvenkind basically makes your character harder to see, giving you advantage, rolling twice and taking the highest number, on stealth checks, and for enemies disadvantage, rolling twice and taking the lowest number, on perception checks against her that require sight. So they head in to beat the goblins and capture one to interrogate. After persuading it with gold, they catch his interest and he tells them that their bosses are criminals trying to build some kind of machine. Locating the boss's lair, they find the criminals the guards were searching for earlier. You enter a lair of pillars on the sides. In front of you down the stairs you see the criminals the guards were searching earlier. Standing in front of them is a huge machine, with all kinds of steam and heat coming off of it, feeling it all the way at the entrance. They do not seem to notice you yet. I will sneak behind the pillars, trying to get closer. She rolls for stealth and manages to get an 8 on her first roll. I would like to remind you, you can roll with advantage because of your cloak of Elvenkind. She rolls again and manages to get a 17, which is a lot better. You jump behind the pillars, your steps as silent as the wind. You slowly manage to approach. Oh, I would like to join her. You will have to roll for stealth, but with disadvantage. What? Why? Because you are wearing heavy armor. Don't I get advantage too, because I am close to Nefereth? No, that only works on her. Such a bogus man. He still rolls and manages to roll just a 6. Tough luck. After the bosses got beaten up pretty easily, a second phase starts as I start announcing. You see their shapes change as the Genasi slowly seems to turn furrow and liquid, while the tiefling skin starts burning bright red and light ablazes seconds later. The winds start blowing harder and howling while the elf transforms into a being made of air, and the goblin slowly emerges his skin into a stone-like armor, punching his fists together and ready to fight. I will attack the closest elemental, being a flame elemental, with my flame-tongue sword. He manages to roll a natural 20 with his attack, and rolls close to maximum damage. As your sword clashes into the elemental, it makes short contact before the elemental looks at it, with a rather unimpressed look. What? But I critted it! But you did not one-shot it. I will attack again with my second attack. He rolls another natural 20. We were using a campaign on D&D Beyond, so I could check everyone rolls, and it was actually legitimate. Natural 20! Mediocre damage, but it was still a critical. You make another slash with your sword, as the elemental scorches over you and is ready to attack you on its next turn. That is total nonsense! You made it stronger because you knew that I would kick its rear! That is certainly not the case, so Azra, it is your turn. Yeah, right, let's see what that person does! I muted him a second later, saying, "You are allowed to have critique at me, and you can yell at me however you want, but you are not allowed to trash talk your fellow party members. You are staying on mute until your next turn." We went over to the next turn where Rafaran and Azra got an idea. DM, I would like to open my flask of water and start throwing it over the fire elemental. Alright, I would like you to roll a bare d20. She rolled an 11. As you start violently shaking your flask to it, you manage to get some of the water onto it, as it takes a step back. You can see some of the fire on its arm has become a bit smaller. When it is my turn, I would like to do the same. I actually homebrewed the elementals a bit so they'd have weaknesses, such as water the fire elemental, or the earth elemental having no resistance against bludgeoning damage, so it would feel rewarding for the players to find out their respective weaknesses. After a long battle of combat, the party won, keeping the earth elemental unconscious to claim the bounty for that particular criminal being wanted. After getting a handsome reward of 500 gold and a few nights of free rest at a tavern of choice, Kara still seemed a bit grumpy. Well, I think we should head to Farlan next. I want to revisit some old friends and maybe see my little ornament again. Well, you went out of your way to come here even though it's a detour, so that's okay. Kara responded to this in a quite demeaning tone. Are we just gonna visit every town we have in our backstory to talk to old friends? No, I just wanted to check in on a special project. Why are you so cranky? Are you salty you didn't get to kill that fire elemental in like 6 seconds? I had hit him so hard he was supposed to be dead so much earlier. I am fantastic at being able to fight. DM, may I roll to see if I know about any resistances? I allowed it, and he rolled a natural 19 with his +6 modifier. You remember from Monstrology class that elementals are immune against damage of their same element. You also know that most elementals are pretty sturdy to any item that is not a magic weapon. I'll explain this to Kara. But my weapon is a flame-tongued sword. I should have done at least normal damage. No, because it does not do magical damage. It is normal fire damage and normal slashing damage. Indeed, just because your IQ is as high as the age of Azra's daughter does not mean you have to be rude about not getting your way. Most of us got a laughter out of that statement. Except for Carl. I could just feel him getting more annoyed over the microphone. DM, I would like to hit Vin. What? Why would you? It's fine, let him. Well, okay then, roll to attack. He sadly hits, with Vin taking 5 points of damage. Ah, that hurt. I want to attack her again. I'm casting shield. He rolls to attack and misses on his second attack. As you try to go in for a second attack, Vin extends her hand in front of her. A purple energy-like shield forms in front of her, ricocheting your hand off of it. I would like to cast Scorching Ray, but only as a warning shot. I don't want to hurt him too bad. For those of you who do not know, Scorching Ray is a spell that allows you to fire 3 rays. So you have to roll for each of those rays. 2 of those Scorching Rays hit, with one of them missing. Okay, Kara. You see Vin raise a staff, slamming the bottom onto the ground as the crystal in it lights up. 3 purple blasts of fire scorch you, as 2 of them hit you right in the arm. You manage to step aside on time for the 3rd one though. I grab my flame tongue sword and attack. Okay, do you want to take a warning hit as well? He had already rolled and, at this point, had managed to roll his 3rd natural 20 in the session. It was rather painful to look at. Vin was only on 3 hit points as Kara nearly yells, "I attack again!" I intervened at this point, seeing that I saw where this was going to go. As you try to attack, you 2 feel yourself getting lifted by your collars. The barkeeper, a 6'3" tall Leonin, looks you 2 in the eyes. "What do you think, ye bundle of monkeys, think you're doing? You're destroying me tavern. You better pay up or so to Shante, I will throw both of you in jail." My apologies for the trouble we have caused you. Please allow us to pay for the damage. How much do you think that would be? 100 gold at least. Here is 50 gold from me. Kara, you should really pay the other half. I won't. And why is that? I don't feel like it, and she used her magic on me. Then let's have a chat with our good old pals of the town's guard, shouldn't we? He got arrested and put behind bars until he was bailed out, or until he sat out his jail time of 2 weeks. Logically, the party did not want to pay his bailing money. And this was one of many stories I have of Kara, if you would like to read more. Do let me know, and I hope I somewhat entertained you guys with reading this. As for people like Kara, don't rage over TTRPG just because it does not go as planned. It just makes you look immature. And that's where the story ends. For now. So, let's talk about the main subject for today's video. Learning curves. You see, I'm inclined to think that Kara's player was at least initially attempting to learn how to engage in roleplay, even suggesting that he was fine with a less combat-heavy campaign. Whilst his method of trying was to frame it alongside his previous experience in a combat-heavy game may not have been the best of ideas, I like to give credit where credit is due. An attempt was made, albeit not to much success. If a player is attempting to roleplay in earnest, and the party turns around and actively shuts that down repeatedly by being less than supportive or even outright bullying the player or their character, it can lead to that player getting angry and lashing out. Especially in a situation where their character isn't able to do the one aspect that they can actually do well, fighting hostiles in this case. If someone is attempting to learn how to do something commendable such as role-playing, maybe they should have at least a tiny reward at the end of it, as encouragement to keep learning. Maybe the next town they visit has some wandering mercenary that could be challenged to a fair fight, leading to roleplay opportunities for Kara. However, I also have to say that acting like a jerk at the table towards the DM and your fellow players is not commendable behaviour, even if in retaliation. And especially when you have also turned around and demanded advantage when the situation would not logically allow for it. Regardless of whether the right call was made on Kara's Flame Tongue sword being able to damage a physically resistant fire elemental fully due to being a magic weapon, there was a missed opportunity to have the player himself make a general knowledge check to provide a roleplay opportunity for Kara to learn in character that his weapon was being less effective. It's implied that his critical strikes were at least doing something, and it would have been an opportunity to at least showcase a character doing what he apparently does best. Another aspect that needs consideration in the story is the distinct bias against Kara's player at the table, especially since the entire party, DM included, made the player the subject of the jokes. This is like having a group of bullies pick on someone with the endorsement of an authority figure, such as a dungeon master. It's distinctly unethical and aggravating, especially when a character uses in-character dialogue to snipe at said player. Instead of explaining that because the fire elemental consisted of fire and was thus immune to the flame tongue sword, the player instead insulted the character, and the party laughed at the half-orc. In other words, at the expense of the player and his character. If you feel you need more than just a warlock speaking through a cartoon phoenix to explain to you why that kind of response is inappropriate, I can't help you. But I can at least provide some insight. Let's talk about the topic of response appropriateness, at least in brief. Now, whilst throwing a punch in character to express anger could be seen as a person venting, that's only really acceptable if PvP has been cleared as being okay in Session 0, or else as a general consensus amongst the whole party, or perhaps between the party members involved in the moment. So naturally, in response to a punch meant as a vent, the wizard responds not with a cantrip, but with a full-on second level spell. Did I mention at the start of the video that the DM is meant to mediate potential issues before they escalate into problems? Because the DM only really issued a response, albeit in-game, after that situation went into a high alert problem. He didn't try to mitigate the issue prior to that point, only involving the barkeep on Kara's second attack with the sword. All in all, this entire story depicts a rather serious mess, and may well have demotivated Kara from attempting to do any further roleplay in his future campaigns. So, what can we learn from this story? Well, for me, the critical lesson that I would encourage new players to learn from this story is that engaging in a new skill such as DMing or roleplaying is something that should be encouraged, and it can be a considerable learning curve. Additionally, if someone is still in the process of going through that learning curve, they should be encouraged to keep learning and be provided some guidance, instead of being shunned at every opportunity. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed my content and would like to see more, feel free to subscribe and give the video a like. It's free to do, and every bit of support is highly appreciated. Plus, you can always change your mind at a later date. Thank you again for watching, and I shall see you all next time.